Welcome back to the WeMaple Video Show. Today we're joined by Dagmar Knutson, CFO, founder of 10 Peaks Alliance, mother, loves nature. We were just talking about trees and how in Japan they prescribe people to go walk around trees. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I love trees. If anyone knows me, I have a deep and abiding love of trees, and I think they're amazing. I grew up on a sawmill. My family still owns that sawmill. So I have a deep understanding and respect for and appreciate, what they all provide to us, not only for, from, making a living and providing to our economy, but there's something being among the trees and there's an energy there. And I love to be walking in and around the trees. And so when I go hiking, I love our Rocky Mountains here. I go hiking in the mountains there, and it is just fantastic. People always ask me, are you like a tree hugger? And I'm like, oh, heavens. I hug trees, but I am not that traditional definition of I like to put my hands on the trees and I like to walk around the trees and I feel the energy. So I love walking among the trees.
Pine cones or acorns? Which would you, if you had to choose one?
Pine cones.
Moss in the forest, the way that squishy moss feels, or like a bed of pine needles?
Oh, the moss, 110%. We were hiking a couple summers ago. We went to the Bows Glacier, the head of the Bow there. And oh my goodness, we have to walk around the lake and you end up going through the forest and there's this beautiful, lovely moss. And you walk on it, it's like nice and soft. And the smell that comes from all the organic materials, and you're walking right through the trees, the trail goes right through there. Oh my gosh, that was like one of the best parts. Like better than when you get to the actual falls and then there's the waterfall there. Like that's pretty spectacular too. But walking among those trees, that's awesome.
Fantastic. We were talking about the add-on of, because, go back 100 or 200 years, none of us are really actually Canadians in the traditional sense of our families are really from here. Often within a generation or two, our families have come from somewhere in Europe, generally speaking. And with the last name Knutson, you were describing that actually would have been an origin of Knut.
So that's my husband's family's name. And yes, they are fifth generation farmers in Southwest Saskatchewan. They still have the farm. Their name is derived from when the four founding, brothers that came over originally into the Dakotas and then made their way across and ended up in their farm near Calgary, Saskatchewan, actually. And so, they changed their names. And they are the son of Knut, and they were the son of Lars and the son of Anders, and we ended up with Knutson. And my journey is that I was born in Germany, and my parents and I, we immigrated when I was a year old, and we came over and we settled in Drayton Valley of all places. And so my family still has their farm there. My mom still lives there. My dad's passed now a number of years already. But yeah, we all start from somewhere, and we made our home here in Canada and love it.
Fantastic. You've had quite a successful career in your professional life, and then you had a son, and because you had your son, that had you start to look at the education system in a different way, and that inspired you to start 10 Peaks Alliance. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, my son, he inspired me. It's April 2019, and we're in the kitchen, and it's lunchtime, or he's in grade 9, right? And he's home at lunch, and we're standing in the kitchen, and he goes, "Oh, Mom, we're the worst in the world." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Our oil sands, we are like the worst in the world." I said, "Okay, I know our emissions haven't always been the greatest, but do you know that they've come down 20 to 30%? And do you know about that?" He's like, "Nope, don't know anything about that." I said, "Okay, carbon capture, it's a really big deal. Do you know anything about carbon capture? It's a big deal for Alberta, by extension, Canada. It's a big deal. Do you know anything about that?" He's like, "No, Mom, I don't know anything about that." I said, "Okay, we live in Red Deer, and so my son plays hockey, and at that time he's playing AA. We're in Lacombe, and we're in the rink there quite often." And I said, "Aiden, we are literally 15 minutes down the road from the rink is the injection site for the Alberta carbon trunk line." I'm like, "Do you know anything about that?" And he goes, "No, Mom, but our teacher says that our textbooks are at least 5 years out of date." And I thought, you know what? I said, that's fair enough. I'm the CFO of a welding manufacturing company in Red Deer. We build pressure vessels, pipes, storage tanks, all that kind of good stuff. We're inundated with innovation and technology that happens every year. And I can't expect teachers to stay up on all the innovation and all the technology and then be experts in it to write the lesson plans and then be comfortable enough to teach it in the classroom. So I thought, well, what can I do? So I thought, well, I can start sharing emails. And so I sent out an email to all his teachers and the principals of his middle school. And I said, who wants to get an email from Dagmar? I'm willing to share once a month innovation that I run across. There's videos, articles, whatever it might be. I'll share with you. And who got back to me? The math, social, and science teachers. And I started out with 2 because the one taught the 2 subjects. And that's how it all started. I started to share monthly emails. And then as I went through it, I just thought, well, what else can I do? So I can organize a conference. We have these amazing speakers about all the innovation and technology. What are we doing to, reduce emissions and carbon? And what are we doing about climate change? And I'm like, oh, we can go to Rexall and we can go to Saddle Dome. And yeah, one thing led to another, and our first conference was all online because, of course, the pandemic came, and we made a few pivots and changes, and we held our first conference in October 21, and it was amazing.
And just recently you had first I'd really acknowledge you what it takes to start something new. You have to have that entrepreneurial nature. It doesn't take nothing to just start something out of nowhere. And to pull off, we participated in that first one that you had. And to pull that off, it went relatively smooth for a first event. You had some sponsorship, you had some great partnerships, some great speakers. So it turned out fantastic. And now you just recently completed on your most recent one. How did that go?
Well, we just had our 3rd annual, and the theme was Welcome to Our Net Zero Future. It was fantastic. We held it in person, and we still offer virtual because we want to reach as many students and teachers that we can. And we held it at Red Deer Polytechnic, and the keynote was in their amazing theater room there. It holds 525 kids, and we're excited to have 470 in-person attendees come. And so they enjoyed 2 keynote speakers and then 16 breakout sessions, and we had some workshops as well because we offer the conferences for kids through 7 through grade 12. And so our grade 7 and 8ers, it's a lot for them to sit all day and listen. And so we gave them some interactive workshops, and that worked out really well. And so, yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was great.
That's excellent. From a social impact perspective, this work I think is really important because at that time in youth's lives, they're starting to think about what do I want to do for my career? And if they're inundated with this idea that, if I go into engineering or geology, that means I'm going to have to work in oil and gas, which is inherently bad. And this sort of message that's been sort of pressed on culture that it's not okay to work in oil and gas, that if you do that, you're harming the environment in some way. And so how do you view 10 Peaks from a social good? Why is 10 Peaks important from a social perspective for youth at that age?
We like to share good news stories. And there have been some speakers and supporters of ours that even tell me through the sharing of technology, innovation, and having speakers in our program that is a very well-balanced program, we offer hope. We have kids that are dealing with eco-anxiety, and they don't know what they don't know. It's no fault of anybody's. We just need to communicate and share those stories of change and having conversations that allow us then to develop a good base knowledge, which allows kids then to develop their critical thinking skills. So our program, we're really proud of it. We have a balanced program, and I think that's the strength of the whole conference. So we have a quarter of our speakers are what I call traditional oil and gas with their net zero goals. A quarter of them are alternative energy speakers. A quarter of them are climate and environment speakers, and a quarter of them are a natural resource. So in our last conference, we had speakers from agriculture industry come because their industry is also becoming more sustainable. They also have net zero goals. They also have emissions targets and so forth. And so it's a big part of our economy here in Alberta and, well, Western Canada and Canada as a whole, agriculture. So I think it's really important to include speakers about other industries. So this year, for our 4th annual in 2024, we're going to be swapping out the ag speakers, and we'll be bringing in the forestry speakers.
Well, you do love trees, so.
I love my trees.
That's 10 Peaks thing was just to get big enough so you get all the tree people together. I see what you're up to.
I love trees. And you know what? The forestry industry, it's a pillar of our, of Alberta's economy, but also in BC, and you go into Saskatchewan, like it's a big deal. And when you go out east as well, then I think the more our kids hear about what the plans are and what the net zero goals and emission reductions and how to reduce our carbon footprint, that's important. So our theme for 2024 is growing forward together, clean tech and your carbon footprint. And so we want to explore those opportunities that the energy industry has, where the ag industry can also collaborate with, no different than what was presented with the ag industry. I think we're all in it together, and I think we can go forward together.
You mentioned the East Coast. Have you ever spent any time out on the East Coast?
Okay, I got as far as Hamilton. I have not gotten to the East Coast.
Because you want to talk about trees. If you get as far as Nova Scotia in October, the rich oranges and reds in the maple trees in Nova Scotia, I haven't seen leaves like that anywhere else in the world. If you like leaves and trees, get out east in October if you can.
I will get it on my bucket list.
Put it on your list. What else is on the list?
Oh, well, I just came back from Germany. My Oma, she turned 100, and I haven't been back in 18 years, and it was really good to see everyone and my family that I do have in Germany. And so I'd like to go back there again. I am super excited just to go. Europe is always, anyways, it's fantastic. I also like traveling into the U.S. My sister, she lives in Colorado, and I love Colorado. I also like the 4 seasons there in the mountains and so forth. But yeah.
You've been to Boulder?
Yes. Boulder and the Garden of the Gods is amazing. If anybody ever wants to go walk somewhere and feel some different energy, that place is amazing. It's beautiful.
There's an interesting little mining town about, I think, 90 minutes or so from Boulder that has a bunch of old casinos in it that you can't have a casino in Denver. And so they built all these casinos out in the middle of the mountains. As I went and spent a couple of days out there, and it's all these kind of quirky, like quite wealthy people that just like live in the mountains and spend their whole days in casinos. It's so bizarre and interesting. And if next time you go out there, it's worth it. And it feels like this old mining town, and yet it's full of casinos.
Oh my goodness. That is one thing that casinos, I can take them or leaving. That's not a big thing for me to attract me, but if there's a place to go hiking around there and go check out the mountains and check out those boulders, and I'm all in.
Got it. So let's get back to this idea that you've created around collaboration and bringing together two kind of different worlds, like ag and energy, or energy and forestry. What do you see for innovation, and how kind of the way of bringing those things together generates new conversation and new ideas?
Oh my gosh. I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. Like I started off, when I was talking with my son, about carbon capture. Well, carbon capture isn't just limited to the energy industry. I think it's a game changer for everyone. So in the summer, it was announced with the cement, with Heidelberg doing some great carbon initiatives to reduce their emissions and carbon when we create cement because of carbon capture facility. And that's up in Edmonton where they're doing all this R&D. Like they're an international company. It's amazing to think then that carbon capture is also the backbone for, oh my gosh, the Dow facility that was just announced 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago now. that I think is a game changer too. So the Edmonton Hydrogen Hub, where we have all of this great $43 million worth of investment, right? That is planned and wanting to go ahead, and that this opportunity that is, for that industry. So now when you add forestry, well, my gosh, they grow trees, and, how are they being sustainable? And how, for example, the circular economy, this concept of circular economy has always kind of been identified with plastics, but really it identifies with a lot of industries. And I think the circular economy and the forestry industry is huge. So people don't know where all the waste goes, right? Like when you cut a tree down and you use the main part for building materials, lumber, what have it, different boards and so forth. But like there's a lot of waste there that is also usable, and they do use those slabs and the sawdust and so forth that is used in alternative forms of energy. And so there's that whole circular economy, right, that ties into it as well. So my gosh, there's other initiatives that ties directly with energy, where like synthetic diesels and so forth, that, you can carbon capture, you can take natural gas, carbon capture it, break it up into this hydrogen component, add the bio from lumber residues and waste and so forth, and you come up with this amazing synthetic diesel. It's like who thinks of that? Well, we do in Alberta, right? And by extension then into Canada. That's the fantastic story that's going on here, is that the entrepreneurial spirit, yeah, it's a game changer. And I'm kind of excited for the kids and the future here. Like I keep telling my son, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I was graduating at this time, I get like it's daunting and there are issues like we need to address, but we are all smart people. Like we are smart people and we can get it together, and we are getting it together. So let's remember what we have in common and move forward together.
Great message. Has the conversation around the dinner table changed at all with your son since he made that first comment around, oh, Alberta, we're the worst, and then you went on this crusade with 10 Peaks?
Yes, he, of course, sees now too, like all the work that is being done, like by the various industries and the work that's happening, in oil and gas. So yeah, the conversation is changing. When I ask him, I'm like, so like, what are you going to do to reduce your, carbon footprint? And he's like, well, Mom, I'm going to buy an EV car. And I'm like, well, that's great. Like, that's like a great start. Like, we don't all have to drive combustion vehicles. Like a lot of us have two car households. Of course, one can be an EV car and still use our other combustion vehicle to pull our wagons and go camping and, for the guys that go out in the West Country, right? But I'm like, what else can you do? And he just looks at me. And he hasn't thought further about like, what can you do every day to conserve energy, to reduce your, energy waste, right? I think a lot of kids see, and I've heard the message that this is an industry issue, and industry definitely has its part. Like I am 110% about that, but we need to take the conversation further about what can you do personally. Like I think at 10 Peaks, it's not just because I love trees, but I want kids to connect with the environment so that when they go out in the world and they start their careers and start living their lives, that is part of their choices and the consideration. So we share the message of planting trees to encourage kids to ask questions and answer questions of the speakers. We give them a tree planting question. And so when they're in their sessions, the ones that give their name and their school, then we give them a code to go plant trees. And so the virtual program that we have as a virtual tree lot, they can go plant 10 trees, but we also then plant 10 trees in their name in a tree lot in Smeaton, Saskatchewan, because kids need to realize that their actions matter and that it all has a ripple effect. And I always give the example, can you imagine if we all just potted a plant, a flowering plant in a pot, no matter where we lived, how much more food there would be for our bees? Like our bees go through this starve, then gorge cycle. maybe if we just did that one simple act, and everyone, even if you lived in an apartment, you could have a pot of flowers on your balcony, then that's one act that matters. So you could see how the ripple effect is. And if you allow kids to explore how they can then contribute to, their actions, right? And conservation, energy conservation, and then thoughtful use, and then going forward and doing other actions, they too can make a difference.
I really like that idea that, it's sort of, you expressed it with the question that you asked to your son, where you asked about what he could do. And he said, Mom, I could get an EV car. And just this kind of idea of it starts with the individual and then can go outwards with the ripple effect that you're describing. Earlier, before we started the recording, we were talking about coffee, and I was describing in an office setting, you brew a pot of coffee and then often half the pot gets thrown out, a new pot gets made. And it's not necessarily wasteful, but it's certainly just annoying of in and out coffee grinds mess. And so we had switched to a Keurig, and with 4, 5, 6 people in an office in a week, all those pods that are discarded. And there was a contribution here from one of our colleagues which I had never heard of, that there's reusable pods. And so, yeah, I'm encouraged by that idea of now for us at our company, how just that little act of that's say 2 cups of coffee per person per week, call it probably 600 of those pods maybe annually, or maybe probably that's 600 a month. So that's a lot of wasted plastic that we could just make a simple tweak.
And we have to think that if we can make those changes, then that's great, right? But industry as well is making the changes to the plastics and the chemistry so that they can all be recycled, right? There's a lot of initiatives out there that I think our kids need to know about. Oh my gosh, some of the great work that's going on, even in central Alberta. So living in Red Deer, we are surrounded by the chemical plants. There's some great work going on there. And I think our kids need to hear about it. So when we then talk about plastics and recycling and microplastics, I think there's a lot of work that's already been done, and there's still work to do that they then need to be aware of, so they can then decide, do I want to then work with a business or have a career in that area, right? Maybe it's all about recycling and how we can become better recyclers. I remember when I was going to school in the 80s, right? And I think we all drank the Kool-Aid when we just said, okay, we're just going to use all of these plastics and then we're going to recycle them. We always thought, yeah, there's lots of recycling plants out there. But when you start talking to people, there are not very many recycling businesses at all for plastics. And somehow it's this circular economy again. I think we all have a part to play. So, industry has a part to play to develop the ability so those plastics can be recycled efficiently and be brought back into the processing. So that's a big recognition, right? So then it's not a matter then of having to choose between, plastics and the technology there or the environment. It's technology and plastics in this example and the environment, right? So it's a matter of rethinking of what we are wanting to do. So, oh my gosh, like recycling program, companies organizations, I should say, like APRA, they're doing amazing work. Like, it's fantastic, and it's in Alberta, and our kids need to know about it. Then they can choose where they want to go work and where they want to contribute to. I don't think, working in and creating solutions to reduce our emissions and reduce our carbon has, you have to be an engineer to do it and just go down the science basis. I think everybody, can contribute in one way or the other. Coffee example as a key, as a note.
Have you started looking at AI at all, involving anything from the AI world in 10 Peaks?
Oh my gosh, we had some speakers last year that talked about robotics and AI, and the kids, of course, it was like the sold out session. So we had this amazing session with Canadian Natural, Steve McKay, and it was like, because the teachers pre-register their kids in that space, that one got it was full to the limit. And we had these amazing, oh my gosh, we had some great students in St. Joseph's in Red Deer they had this all-female robotics team that ended up winning an award last year when they went to Sherwood Park. And so we celebrated them at our breakfast because we kicked that off. It's open to the public where the conference is not. And they talked about, they have a love of robotics. Those girls knew nothing about robotics, learned all about it, ended up winning an award. And so their teacher and a lot of their classmates, 70 of them, came to the breakfast. And then they went from the breakfast where they got celebrated, because I think it's important to showcase their initiatives and their forward thinking, applying robotics in their school system now, right? And then taking that, nurturing that love of curiosity and innovation, and robotics into automation, AI. So I know a lot of those kids went into those sessions. We had a couple that, targeted that. And I got some feedback from their teacher, and she's just like, the kids were amazed. It was fantastic. And she goes, I learned something too. And I put it into my curriculum right now. And I'm like, well, isn't that the best news story? Like, when we all learn something, we're curious, we are open, we share the knowledge, it gets taken up in our own world and in our own lives. So yeah, I thought that, I'm like, that floats my boat. That inspires me. Hooray. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the best when you get that real on the court kind of feedback for what you've created with 10 Peaks. You have someone actually reach out to you and say, hey, this had an impact.
Oh, I have another great story, because we had some students from the Okotoks area. And so the teachers there got together, and we offer a busing fee for students to come in person, because we appreciate that it's a field trip, and it takes money to, get a bus and pay for fuel and so forth. So we offer $500 a school to come, and they pooled their resources. They had all these, 20 some kids come from the Okotoks area, and they came. And I heard from their teacher that on the ride home, all they talked about was what they learned at the conference. And they were just jacked about it. And I'm like, that? Yeah.
Wow. So how do we scale that? Really acknowledge you. How do we scale that? As 10 Peaks, as you're looking forward into 2024, how do we get more Alberta youth having that experience of, wow, look what I learned today? Because that isn't common for that age group to be talking about what they learned. They not suffer their way through school, but sometimes suffer their way through school, and yet to have this amazing experience. How do we scale it? What will help 10 Peaks? How do we get more teachers involved, more students to have that experience? What can we do?
Well, we have an amazing website. I encourage everyone to say, hey, if you know someone that's in grade 7 through 12 and, you think this is a great idea, we record all the sessions. So our entire offering is on our Learning Library page. And so you can see all 3 conferences, actually, and they're recorded in their entirety, including the Q&A that the kids have. So if you feel that you're learning something, we'll share that and ask your kids then to talk to their teacher and say, hey, this looks kind of interesting. Like, maybe I can go attend. Maybe we can register as a class and we can go up for next year. Our registration open up on May 1st. And then we like to, have teachers say, oh, I want to bring, 20 kids, or I want to bring 100 kids, because we have some schools that bring a lot of kids, which is awesome. And then the parents, right? And people in industry and people in organizations, if you think it's a good idea, then reach out to the teachers and say, hey, I found this. Do you think you can incorporate this? There's sessions that are recorded. Maybe there's something of interest to you that you want to share in your classroom today. So it's about getting the word out. And then, of course, from a corporation point of view, we're always looking for speakers, and we have our theme, and we have some amazing ideas. And so we always reach out to speakers and corporations that want to be involved. And then we are a non-for-profit, so then sponsorship makes the world go around. And yeah, then it allows us to have the good news stories continue. And hopefully we can reach out to other kids and other teachers and show them the opportunity to join us, either virtually or in person.
And what is this fantastic website, Dagmar, where people can find you and learn more about 10 Peaks?
So it's www.10 peaks. So 10peaks.ca. You will see there our last year's conference. I still have it up and all our speakers there, although we'll be taking it down shortly here after the new year as we gear up for the next one. But we also have our learning library there that stays there, and you can watch all those sessions. They're just on our YouTube site. So yeah, they're free to download and check out and see what you can do with it. We also have some lesson resources where we take some of the hot topics and we develop some lesson resources for teachers. So if they want to take it a little bit further and put it into the classroom, then those resources are available for them too to add into their day. And yeah, we just try to share the good news.
Excellent. Well, keep it up. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I think this is great. So I appreciate it.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks.